Hey everyone, you're watching We Had That, and today I'm going to talk about the 1980 Butch Cavendish figure from the Legend of the Lone Ranger line from Gabriel. When I was a kid, my mom and I used to listen to an old 8-track tape of Lone Ranger radio programs whenever we would make the long drive to visit my grandmother. During the summers, I would watch reruns of the old Clayton Moore Lone Ranger TV show that originally ran from 1949 to 1957, so I was familiar with the Lone Ranger stories ever since I was a young kid. In 1981, the movie The Legend of the Lone Ranger hit the big screen, and my mother took me to see it at the movie theater when it came out. Like many big action movies at the time, a line of action figures arrived in stores with hopes of selling well off the success of the movie. The early 1980s were an amazing time for awesome 3 3/4-inch action figures. The popularity of Star Wars figures made it the dominant scale, and the success of the new G.I. Joe Real American Heroes continued that scale's popularity. But also in the mix were dozens of wonderful short-lived lines with sales that weren't as impressive. Unfortunately, the Legend of the Lone Ranger movie flopped hard, but that didn't matter to me. As a little kid, I actually liked the movie okay, and I thought the figures were great. The figures were released by Gabriel, who had been selling their 10-inch Lone Ranger figures and accessories throughout the 1970s, including a great figure of Butch Cavendish. Yes, the movie bombed. It cost between $13 and $18 million to film, depending on who you ask, and brought in $12.5 million at the box office. It got bad reviews, and Clinton Spilsbury, the actor who played the Lone Ranger, won awards for Worst Actor and Worst New Star. But the toy line somehow managed to keep reappearing on the shelves for a while, even though there were only 5 figures and 3 horses in the line. The earliest release of the line was just the Lone Ranger, Tonto, and Butch Cavendish, and each of their 3 horses. Subsequent releases also included Buffalo Bill Cody and General George Custer. There was a later mail-away offer for a cardboard western town with the purchase of any 4 figures or horses. At one point, the figures package backs cross-promoted the Gabriel line of Zorro action figures too. I'm actually not 100% sure when the Lone Ranger line was first available. I usually read that the line is from 1980, and that is the date given on the back of the earliest packages, which white out Buffalo Bill and General Custer and label them as coming soon. The packages that cross-promote the figures with Zorro figures have a 1981 date, and so do the earliest packages that promote the mail-away offer for the Western Town, which was originally going to end on June 30th, 1982, and was then extended until June 30th, 1983. It seems strange that the line would have been available for so long, from 1980 until at least 1982, but those were different times, I guess. I must have gotten my figures early on because I never had Buffalo Bill or General Custer as a kid, or any of the Zorro figures. The Buffalo Bill figure in particular was nicely designed, and I eventually added him to my collection as an adult, so I'm sure I would have picked him up back when I first got the rest of them if he had been available at the time. I did have the Lone Ranger, Tonto, and Butch Cavendish, as well as their horses, and I thought they were cool figures. Because the line had so few characters, they were often thrown into adventures with other lines of action figures that I had at the time. Raiders of the Lost Ark, who had a similar articulation, Fisher-Price Adventure People, who crossed over into most of my 3 3/4-inch lines, and Star Wars figures, who were my main action figures until G.I. Joe arrived, all included adventures with the Lone Ranger characters. The Lone Ranger first appeared as a radio drama in 1933. Butch Cavendish has been the main villain for the Lone Ranger pretty much since the beginning, and has appeared in just about everything from the radio show to the TV show, from comic books to novels, just about anything that chronicled the adventures of the Lone Ranger. The Lone Ranger's origin was that he had been one of 6 Texas Rangers led by Captain Dan Reed, who was the Lone Ranger's brother, who was chasing after a band of outlaws led by Butch Cavendish, played by Glenn Strange in the TV show. The Texas Rangers were betrayed by a guide named Collins who was secretly working with Cavendish and led into an ambush at Bryant's Gap where all of the Texas Rangers but one, the Lone Ranger, were killed. Dan Reed's brother made a mask from Dan's vest and became the Lone Ranger. The movie pretty much followed this same story. Butch Cavendish was played in The Legend of Lone Ranger by Christopher Lloyd, who had already tasted success in the TV show Taxi and the film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. However, a few years after The Legend of the Lone Ranger, he would really find fame as Doc Brown in the Back to the Future trilogy. The action figure somehow manages to not look like Christopher Lloyd, despite not really having anything specific that I can point to as the reason for not looking like Christopher Lloyd. But still, it's a nice figure. The figure has Butch Cavendish's famous black hat and an outfit that matches some of the scenes in the movie. He also came with a pistol, just like one of the pair that came with the Lone Ranger figure. I always liked it when you could attach a figure's accessories to the figure itself, and these guys came with holsters that would really hold the pistols. Gabriel also made Butch's horse, Smoke. Butch and Smoke were each sold separately, as well as together in a 2-pack. What do you think of the Butch Cavendish figure? Did you have any of the Legend of Lone Ranger action figures as a kid? Do you have any of them now? Which character's your favorite? Tell me in the comments below. Also, please give this video a like and share it on social media. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe to my channel and hit that notifications bell so that you'll be notified when I post new videos. And one last thing, if you're a fan of toys, you should know about ToyLanta, the biggest toy show in the southeastern United States held annually just north of Atlanta, Georgia. Visit ToyLanta.com for more information. As always, thanks for watching.